good?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yo, you see that outlet right there?
Yeah. That was sick catch. I did not think I was going to get that.
Yeah, I got it. Appreciate it.
It was a terrible throw, so.
Yeah.
Alright, just when the debate's over, if you'll... Actually, you can just unplug it for all I know.
No, no.
Oh, you good? Alright, Steve, you good?
As soon as everybody shuts up. Oh, it's Connor.
Huh?
Alright.
The role of the ballot is to evaluate the simulated policy of the with negative must spend a policy option 1 fairness and anything else moves 6 of the what you say by shifting the debate away from the framework forcing 13 sometimes you in the pair so the atmosphere arguments against negative decreases overall education even on board subject to discourse fails fortunate individuals can discursively perform themselves out of the socio-economic position cannot perform themselves out of an unfunded industry being laid off auto work and different prospects of finding a new job traditional theories of structural and greater insight and how these individuals deal with social element of the new micro-level theories have discourse over the thought state is reading for political reform rights do not fix identities how does the bureaucratic power speaks to 100,000 individuals who spirit the privatization best found 3 particularity crouch out 8 pragmatic approach should not begin with on top of the begin with acts being in specific situation have to act under time pressure and face amply integration puts premium on diagnosis short push we cannot just rely upon what attention to have to pay attention to the particular case there remains a crucial element of timing for the app specifically activates agency how to run a debate game regarding balance game teaching dialogue plus offers the explanation why debate game may be valuable outside perspective reflects a fundamental on human understanding of the interaction individuals reach ideological understanding of the mind on ontological process ideological becoming play debate scenarios towards becoming knowledge themselves also become particularly responsive 5 simulation good argument 12 plus simulation out of the power from unique combination simulation role playing in order the technique allows a group of participants to engage clash action saving found with plus simulation dedication of a high level of proficiency developing participant knowledge standard is consistency with sex rights standards deontological non-consequential sex rights are fundamental and involved not something fungible and greater again that can be traded for a greater good decrease present down the road one structural minds come first winter in line 99 to recognize structural minds first to ask questions by why we taught the which behavior for the belief our normal perception process by people and in our groups those statical outside of justice injustice fair and justice figures to those invisible those false out or moves through structural minds is not inevitable from wherever operations build systematic way mitigates facts truly only human rights are mechanically include people or moral theory park and all any major issue related to sexuality after the point of empowerment this is a key precondition for reducing risk of sexual freedom human rights approaches offer key theoretical underpinning effect to aim to guarantee dignity what sex rights include the rights of all persons pure coercion discrimination and sustain a high standard of health and sexuality of the bias respect bodily integrity the right to choose one sexual person enter sexual relationship and a rights-based approach to reprising ethical framework upon which power relations can be contested park and all and a human rights framework provides norms upon its movement to convey social justice can cost-effective approaches fail because they're ethically guarded the measures of proper reference and the rights approach fail because they treat recipients pacific rather than rights being equal participants no longer the years nor the rights comes to the rational universe out of the very temple conflict and human dignity not with action with the power dimension liberating dimension and part 2 is trans gender transition after puberty is difficult and unconvincing adolescence key shields 8 physical not exclusively race make transition older is more difficult early become sexually sound is profitable its rest protection says specific hormones puberty will be arrest adolescence and will just continue working together the child adolescent gender identity is genuine if hormones are not top to puberty process will resume and we don't claim to be transgender means that people must want sexually sound rather those who do should have freedom together Caroline trans youth or adolescent gender identity expression not conform to social expectations science sex there's no way one way of being trans sound seek action hormones means facilities gender expression current laws when it comes to the rights to trans youth Caroline minors are considered unable to consent generalism they must obtain parental consent parents are often abusive or absent this makes it difficult to obtain traditional related care and trans kids are divisible in Western culture the right can be ignored Grisman Delani 6 transgender youth are divisible in social structure similar to binary gender inconsistency and presentation between sex gender usually not taught of the individual targeted victimization part 3 has the right to be trans adolescents have the right to consent to hormone expression therapy the 1C is an affirmation of the basic human rights autonomy of agency of transgender youth only the recognized the basic community of trans people Caroline trans youth based on overwhelming discrimination upon teacher failed to protect some participate in harassment when youth come out of the band often false youth failed to meet the community of trans kids men to become homeless trans youth stop heart suppression commit suicide allowing person out of the access home suppression refuse to recognize the community of trans people frustrated the ability self-determination and infringement upon autonomy the human effects upon discrimination hormone treatment and ensure the depression control provides sense to HC and the basic right to gender self-determination necessary to challenge dominant concepts of gender language the right to gender self-determination disestablishes state power of the mind male people no doubt of the meeting disestablishes a substantial claim at least in the beginning of the discourse near to the right to significant the claim should not be mass and transgender gender kids are a unique situation they're uniquely their life experiences especially come to make medical decisions shields aid adolescents and certain situations near the great capacity decision of adolescents and exception trans youth fit within therapy trans youth seek sex summon the treatment face challenge spread lecture codified kind of acceptance and focus on the law of discrimination from self and trans adolescents being able to bring a level of maturity let's come to the last trans code obtain parents can may be detrimental and our rights approach is part of a larger historical move challenge between the stark distinction between which lives matter and which don't that recognize down to the power of the right to always shifting due to power relation park at all in 880. Those who try to get sexual boundaries, constant state, example, describe life, often part of the ways and framework considered the sharpest numbers of sanctuary religion, which lies human, which are not who not accepting sex rights, one of the reasonably very covered the laws and ID construction, listening to human rights alone can never really just least to the state, except human rights beyond bound tax on human rights relationship specific historical conspecial content different from the notion under powers implies linear powers and fixed but human rights struggles between auto and again the reason human rights that's first field in terms of power continues shifting means the process who which respond to the right violation defined sex rights show the mark one of the important historical shifts and the app also solves outing ethically wrong is the role model 15 hand writes that he was clearly trying to sum up the arms of knowledge made up passing hand article 80 timber course made up and cooperating story and she shared that she trained to hand which urged not to hand Vanderbilt suicide again pleading with hand click ethical issues disclosing Vanderbilt trained status is wrong and the 1AC self-determination model transcends the pathologization of transgender identity Lee 8 the medical model which is the form of TIU with a trans-specific medical disorder those who criticize the medical model articulate self-determination model trans-identity the rejection medical model perceive pathologization and adopted flexible inclusive gender identity anything that doesn't affirm what trans kids want to form a gender policing saying 12 gender expression ultimately liberatory empowered self-induced critical education artists for trans users this one gender identity the man else must protect the trans user follow prescribed power to gender identity how much protect think clearly understand trans become over there in rejection of gender policing is key always saying it all in 12 person identify gender policing threat of they may be flown to my pathology but gender have the honor of my chosen name and everyone has helped with the hearts describe gender policing saying it's hard to predict and when the gender policing occur in the radical action and the word legal recognition is key for law 15 wanting gender freedom as gets more pathological believing wanting meaningful trans movement but the look has radical action at basic level lacking legal recognition non-binary people are classified by the law difficult that living as gender identified with the neoliberal patriarchal society under me. Advocates I means and often back to counter RVIs on I means back and often back to counter should allow the anti more than one capable conditional position. The anti can just concede to the AC firm go for turns which they can just kick out of if they can kick out of the means they have multiple different capable position making the 1 hour which hardly speech and debate completely impossible to prove reasonable after interpretation. There's only 4 minutes in the 1 hour which makes it impossible for me to be back multiple degree ridiculous theory shells reasonable after interpretation allows us to have the actual substance debate key to top education beats right to after we get after seeing the AC you can read binary shells no matter what so they're only read do you ever read substance debate you got check and avoid dumb theory.
Ready?
Yep.
What's this particularity argument in the framing?
So it's basically an argument about how yes, totalizing claims might like have some semblance of truth, but that's not a good explanatory model. For example, it's not good for specific situations. The claim that capitalism is bad or the rule of law.
That's fine. Why does this mean policy option focus?
Because policy is all about the particularity of situations. It's like let's evaluate specific circumstances.
So it's just about evaluating the specific.
It's the reason why totalizing claims are bad. Like saying capitalism or law is bad in every single instance doesn't evaluate how the law actually interacts in specific circumstances.
But aren't you saying that violating like transgender rights is bad in every instance? Like, doesn't your framework wouldn't your framework justify that? Like your framework is literally we should uphold deontologically rights for.
Yes, I'm confused how that's relevant to the argument.
Right, you're saying we cannot make those totalizing claims. You literally just made one in your framework.
No, it's not like totalizing claims as.
Can you explain what totalizing means in the context of the app?
It's ascribing a certain element to something that might not always have that element. For example, law is bad doesn't necessarily mean that the law is always bad. It is a difference between a descriptive claim and a normative claim.
Okay, so why is that different from saying violations of sexual rights bad?
Because that's a normative claim.
So if I make a so why is saying capitalism is bad not
because
a
that is not a
normative
normative claim? That's
how not? If you're
claim.
saying capitalism exploits bodies, how is that not a normative claim?
That's a normative claim isn't like an ethical claim. What is ethically right and wrong? There's a difference between like descriptive saying capitalism.
Yes, I know this. But how is saying people being oppressed by capitalism
you're saying I know
not a
this,
normative claim?
Clearly you don't because there's a difference between
okay, what's your definition? I know what they are. I want to know what's your definition of a normative claim. Because apparently saying bad, it's not normative.
It's both a normative, but also I think the right word to use then to clarify this confusion is prescriptive.
Okay, I still don't understand why saying you should not
normative
endorse a capitalist ideology.
But that is based upon a descriptive, not an ethical basis.
Okay, so your argument is that
descriptive things that capitalism is
so the conclusion is just that we should engage in the material world, right?
Yes, that is one conclusion we can make.
Okay, so let's talk about the goal 8 analysis. What is the argument here? You say that the app specifically activates agency.
So
I don't
the
know
argument
what
is
this
that let me quickly go to that card so I don't mix it up with the. Oh yeah. So this card basically says that debate game requires this form of simulation in gaming and teaching in order to have substantive debate and activate agency. Specifically, it says that.
So we need to have substantive debate. Okay.
No, it's a little bit more specific than that.
We just have to engage in the discussion of the app.
No. It's playing debate scenarios, i.e. policy simulation, that's what the card is in context of, allows people to not only become themselves, but also develop ideological perspectives.
How is that distinct from the 5th argument? It's literally...
One is a simulation good argument, another one is like detracting ourselves from situations is good. because it allows us to develop ideology.
Okay,
That's the fourth one. The fourth one's like, it specifically says playing debate scenarios and like separating ourselves is good.
Okay, that's fine. So, starting, we have 4 minutes for this tournament.
Yep.
Okay, 151, order's gonna be 2 off case. Flash. Do you have the drive?
Yeah. So you said 2, right?
Mm-hmm. Do you mind if I use your stand?
Not at all. Alright.
I'll take it.
Alright. Is everyone ready? The alternative is engaging in anesthesia consciousness. The borderlines are the spacing between dualistic distinctions, creates the possibility of bridging them, which is necessary to solve all forms of oppression. Dualism are based because you split between the conscious and the subconscious itself, a form of dualism which only normalizes the forms of distinction because it allows us to assign dominant parts as internalized with our subconscious mistakes. The consciousness allows us to bridge this gap that's diggity. Borderlands make possible the chance of dualistic method of thinking. The trajectories of oppression are the roots of products of dualist binaries become rigified to great product social one's healing falls rigid binaries. The interpromises of a product dualistic separation of conscious and subconscious binds into the splitting helps ensure the dualistic thinking procedure conscious makes sounds the subject object while in the case of represent the answer between wide lighting color bells in, when replacing the healing space that originates a bare foundation for our thoughts, radical transformation of inner habit, may potentially have significant repercussions for larger global and social progress, multiple implications. One solves case oppression can only oppression only occurs where because we create distinction in the first place and then reproduce them as violence towards others. So we need to first destroy these binaries, otherwise the committer starts to always oppressing them. Second, takes out their solvency. Keeping dualistic distinctions only assures that the violence will be done to the subject, because they start from a point of difference. Next, the contemporary medical system separates the mind, body, and soul by categorizing medicine as a tool to solve injustice relating to only the body. The affirmative advocacy only ratifies their medical choice when the dominant paradigm which ensures subconscious violence as Lara. Health is learning to live with disease, dysfunction, ways of working towards wholeness. You have to look at your body, mind, and soul, so they're all one. We split them and separated, but they are interwoven. When you think about holistic alliances, you step across boundaries. You are given only two choices, similar or separate at our society. The major paradigms of reality were constructed by those in power. Also, this also proves that critique outweighs case, even if they do solve their impacts. They allow for more structural violence, but because all forms of oppression depend on subconscious internalization, they're gonna make an argument that it's about the deontological effect of it. But my argument is that even if you have a good intention, you also simultaneously have bad intentions in the first place, because you create more dualistic distinctions, which creates other forms of oppression, which that you also intend those as well. Next off, the alternative to do the affirmative policy, but not phrased as a medical choice. Medical choice training for trans movement causes others to constitute being transgender biological, which turns the means that you cannot solve. That's Kura. Trans right litigation is reliance on the medical model. Trans as a medical condition produces a category of not transgender people, as well as the pathological discourse that find the stake with the healthiest set of pattern between the leading acknowledge the privileges and models and doubts not transgender people with the privilege of being legal subjects exposed to different gender history and treating people treating gender as biological reaffirms a sex gender binary, which is the root cause of all of their impacts. The reason they are present is because queer genders blur the lines between these categories as trans, gays, gross, and really transgender youth are invisible because the social actually crossplay that card was in the app, which means that a link turns the entirety of the firm because it proves that you only keep the section to binary. You have the Grossman and Aguili analysis from the Wendy indicates that the section to binary is the root cause of all of your impacts, which means that if the critique is true, it link turns the entirety of your case. Then on case, go to the top overview. One, I defend a policy through the PIC, but also I defend a method. Your interpretation only says that I have to defend a post-fail policy, but not that I cannot defend two. The second critique outweighs it. It is key to solve all forms of oppression. It is key to solve all forms of dualistic oppression, which means that if you try to exclude it by saying that it is not a policy option, you have to weigh the net benefits of your interpretation against that. But all of them presuppose some form of engagement, and whether that engagement is good. My argument is that the mestizo consciousness allows us to have these conceptions in the first place. The only reason why we have policy implementation and engagement is because it trains us to be social activists, but the critique already does this. Third mestizo consciousness controls the internally to policy. The to any policy action type beauty. Media says that it creates an effect that it creates a ripple effect that conditions material and that affects material conditions for counter interpretation. The negative does not need to run a post-fail policy if it proposes a method to solve for the material oppression in the affirmative. That's exactly what the critique does. It's also your arguments. First, it's also a fairness argument because the counter interpretation engaged in the app policy is also on the discourse argument. This is not applicable because a mestizo consciousness is not a critique on your discourse, but and the PIC is actually a policy, so it's not a LinkedIn or your particularity argument. Counter interpretation solves your argument because it just says that we have to take an action, but my argument is that the unnecessary step for taking any action is to engage in mestizo consciousness. Your fourth argument is about agency, but read the card. It literally says nothing about policy implementation. Second, CX here, ultimate impacts that we should talk about the material conditions. That is exactly what the NC is doing, and the NC is doing. Then your fifth argument is about simulations being good, but the warrants are not. Even if it says policy simulations, the warrant are just that simulations over ethical dilemmas are these ethical and policy dilemmas are good. That is exactly what the NC does, which means I engage in the discussion. Then on the Grossman and Duagili 6 analysis, trans kids aren't invisible. Now the status quo is improving and can solve case. That means that you have no uniqueness. That's tolerant. Results from a new national study by the Human Rights Campaign. The national, the largest LGBT civil rights organization, reveals a significant uptake of the number of Americans who say they personally know someone who is transgender and correspond, increasing these favorable feelings towards transgender people. 66% of those who say they know the transgender person expressing favorable feelings towards them compared to 30% of who do not. If you didn't, not favorable, 53% points is a powerful testament to the LGBT. This data tells us that dramatic increase in visibility of transgender people outweighs. The A point is that it is more recent than uniqueness evidence that is from 2006. The B point is that this is the biggest LGBT organization and they took the survey. The C point is that they themselves do not think that they are invisible, which probably is the people who are most informed on this impact. Second turn, the framework of the one is actually reifies suppression facing method counter protected. That's Finch 15. If we leave transgender as it turns out reapply self-identification with a more render, meaning that some people would claim it as the wrong person there. But the oppressive attitudes are used against trans people interrogate the trans with. There's a belief in our green about permission to the rest of the world to be told we are using. We're taking away the self-identity that gives the rest of the world permission to misgender. Even if we do not, if trans enough outweighs the root cause of the transgender oppression, people questioning their gender choices today are physically the absence of transgender people encourage society to continue their oppressive attitudes to trans people by misgendering them. 3 turns cross-sex hormone therapy is harmful. It increases risk of skip that card. 3-turn cross-sex hormone therapy affects gender identity. Turning case as GLT2 treatment is itself could be affect the patient's gender identity. Result of the child inability to consent. Parents are forced to weigh the potential harms of the cross-sex hormones against the risk of letting the child develop his or her biological sex. The dangers of cross-sex hormone therapy outweigh although these cross-sex hormones help transgender children develop. The effects of their life could be devastating. 4-turn legal rights or trans bonds counter rights that undermine their protection make the problem worse. Tons of empirics prove that Adler, Tanco's enterprise conflict state rights against discrimination were defeated in Hurley. Other empirics consists rights is not determinative of the competitive rights can be financial capacity counsels against the rights to fancy interests of trans people since a right to not only some pre-existing competing right but might provoke some competing right into existence. Then also the one error will say that the affirmative shows in embracing the basic human right that's sufficient to affirm. My argument is that that is not coherent in a world where where your policy also intends other things, like for instance the legal rights arguments or reaffirming this section to binary, which means that just saying that you affirm an inherent right does not get you out of any of the terms, because the terms are not just consequentialist, but rather they speak to the innate disruption that you cause to the transgender community, which means that they're still applicable even under your deontological framework.
Ready?
Yeah.
Before we start, you did not finish the last card you read.
Which one?
The last card you read. Where did you mark it?
Which?
Like the very last one you
The
read.
Adler?
Yeah.
There's 2 Adler cards. I skipped one, so you might be confused.
No. Like I was
Okay.
watching, and you were like,
Let's see.
provoke into the competing right into existence, and then you didn't read beyond that. You marked it.
Oh, sorry. I went from here, and then I made the analytic argument. I didn't go down. I just presumed that was the end. It was not my intention at all.
Okay, so you marked
I
it
did not go like this, but we can mark it at existence.
All right.
I just saw this thing, and I thought the card was
Yeah,
done.
the card did not end there.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm sorry. Like, it's an honest mistake.
It's fine. Yeah, I got it. Ready?
Yeah.
Stats to the office.
Unconditional.
Let's talk about that then.
Yeah, because
they
they don't contradict.
Yeah, that's interesting because your counterplan seems to do the absent
Right,
medical
but guess
decisions.
what? The critique is a critique on medical choice framing. The pick says do not do medical choice framing, so guess what? They don't contradict.
That's interesting because the very first link you create is like the Borderland or space where I like create dualism is bad. The one you see
Right.
specifies adolescence. Doesn't that create a dualism?
Wait, what?
The one you see specifies adolescence. Doesn't that not create a dualism? Or
The one you
a
see?
binary?
I don't know.
That seems to be relevant if your pick is like, we'll do the aff except for medical decisions, because then that seems to link to.
Well, first of all, that's
critique.
not a unique disadd to the alternative,
No,
because
but it-
guess
but it
what? The
seems to-
app
but it
the
seems-
app also
that-
does.
but that seems to non-unique your net benefit, but that's fine.
No, it doesn't.
Let's
It
quickly talk
really-
about the pick. Could you give me like a counterplan text or a pick text?
Yeah, sure. Do the affirmative policy, but do not use medical choice framing. Do you want me to defend a form of
So
framing?
so it's a reps pick.
Well, no. It is a post-fiat policy with a
Yes,
different form
yes.
of representation.
So it is a reps pick. You do the policy without the representation.
Yeah.
On the case arguments, you say that these terms still apply to the aff, but you concede my framework. All of these seem to be based on like consequences of taking the plan.
No, not all of them.
Which one?
Well, first of
Which
all,
one doesn't?
First of all, the critique one that turns.
No, I'm not talking about the critiques. I'm talking
Okay.
about the case
Sure,
arguments.
sure.
Which ones don't rely on consequentialist
Okay.
framing?
The Finch 15 one talks about the framing and the way we view things doesn't seem like consequence.
Wait.
The GLT2 analysis talks.
No, this seems to be like consequences. Like if we talk about people like trans, this is how trans
No.
people work.
It talks about how you frame them.
All right, sure. The Finch one and
And the Adler analysis indicates that cross-sex hormone therapy
that
affects.
seems to definitely be consequentialist, but that's fine. Let's
Wait,
quickly
wait,
talk.
wait.
Let's quickly talk about the LGBTQ survey that was taken.
Sure.
It says a significant uptick in the number of Americans who say they personally know somebody who's transgender, and a corresponding increasing in favorable feeling towards transgender people.
Yeah.
This is like, I have a black best friend, so I promise I'm not racist or stuff
No,
like that.
no,
Why is that
it's
not the
not.
same thing?
No. Well, first of all, like, I don't even understand.
Like,
the
I know a
reference.
trans
Second-
person. I promise things are getting better.
No. It's not even that, like, whether you know a trans person or not. But second, I would say that is not even a comparable analogy because trans issues and black issues are so different. Like, trans people usually, like,
Sure.
sometimes
How
have
does
to
this?
hide,
How does
right?
this?
Like, exposure.
How does this evidence resolve the impacts to the 1AC?
No. My argument is that it's not
Sure.
that
It's fine. What does the alternative do about trans people?
the alternative does the act policy.
No,
Different
of
things.
the alternative of anesthesia consciousness.
It breaks down dualistic distinctions. There's obviously a dualistic distinction that makes the oppression of trans
Sure.
people. So it would break.
Take
that
break.
too.
Both are unconditional.
Yeah.
$3.15. Actually, sorry, I need a little bit more. All right, 3.
Once again.
I know. Case, first critique, reps pick.
And once you've gotten it.
Yeah.
All right. Case. Alright, sorry. Reps critique, and then what else?
No,
What was it?
case, anesthesia consciousness,
Okay.
reps pick.
Let me open this.
Once you've got it, can I have it, please?
Yes. Sorry.
Since we've now established this is a norm in this round, which makes me uncomfortable.
Oh.
I have to finish it. We started, I have to finish it. I've given you both opportunities
Yeah.
to have me look at your evidence, which I think is terrible, but
No.
here it is. Okay, give me one moment. Okay, so where are we starting our case?
Starting on just the substance like contention level, actually framework, contention level, and then framing,
Uh-huh.
then K1, K2.
Okay.
Okay, everyone ready?
Yeah.
The 1AC is considered that the planet is necessary in order to create trans individuals with recognized humanity. Trans individuals which always all the terms on the case. You've also considered the framework argument that says that we have to take a purely deontological stance, which takes away all of your consequential like cross-sex terms that you read out of the case. You say status quo improvement, you say status quo improvement doesn't. Instead of the 1AC argument that says that uniquely not giving the trans individuals the ability to have hormone suppression therapy and hormone suppression harms their well-being and causes depression, which means that even if you win this evidence, it doesn't answer argument. You say it's most recent biggest argument that read above all sign. You say that it's not transgender individuals certain identity. The one caused by the Carroll evidence that says that uniquely the 1AC doesn't say that there's only one way to be transgender, but rather but rather says that there are multiple distinct options. Hormone suppression just one way expression. Gender therapy also to no impact the argument caused by the shorts evidence. I'll do that on the framing. You say cross-sex hormone, but the 1AC is not cross-sex hormone, rather hormone suppression therapy, which is completely distinct. You say that you say that the only other evidence that says that it affects people's existence and causes legal rights, cause counterintuitive rights caused by the ideological framing. This is still a consequential based framing. That's like saying giving black people rights we shouldn't have done that because it causes black between white people. Also, too, you mark this card and you didn't even read the impact of the card nor the interlinks, which means you shouldn't give them any leeway on this. Now, in the framing debate, you have conceded that discourse failed in the status quo. The role of resolution asks questions how there's no counter role of the ballot, which means that you can only evaluate my role of the ballot. The way fairness, I'm going to prepare for infinite amount of interpretation that they come up with gives infinite unpredictable negative ground, shifts the debate away from that frame, causing types which link towards education fairness arguments, which means that fairness should frame it the rest of the debate. Because if he can have infinite interpretations, i.e. reps argue, that means the affirmative never prepared to defend all those things. Link towards all their engagement arguments will be engagement law is key. That's flawed evidence which someone conceded. Absent combination of radical action, pragmatic politics, closet people from the political sphere. C, discourse fails, which is the conceded Schwartz evidence. It does focus on the materiality, social location, because it does nothing to alter people's conditions. All structuralism, be law and politics can solve the impact of your Michael level. Your failed Schwartz evidence, which means that absent any counter reading of any evidence that says a discourse focus good, you don't get access to the first critique. Now, the first critique fails cause abstract and shots on move, resort to focus on materialism necessary for human rights. That's a part of evidence. 2, our scholarship is good outweigh create students like go and test power dynamics, essential to empower you and create self-respect personal expressions. 3, the one keeps linked to the critique. We don't mandate that individuals are starting to any one specific gender identity, rather open up an infinite possibilities for gender expression. That's the language evidence. 4, we open up politics for trans kids who have always been excluded. Your theorizing doesn't work for those who have lived day-to-day hiding their identity. This card entered the debate. Folly 11, the as circumstances change, consider the mysterious shift and change the line to the other press groups requiring the bitch my church out of the very utility nation on the lose vision. It does not provide those for who identify as bisexual, transgender, or transsexual. She does not include who not queer or straight married, refigured distinction, not necessarily the female, and blue students are seen provided those, and the woodland counter of the one wide range of the solid, not specified of the physical location of the but we want an individual non-delusive analysis is racist and reinscribed binaries. The Felony 11, the recent start of the scientific holding no scientific comparison implication noted for race on Andalus also works many of the same type of bicycle as Andalus, and the effect of rediscovering the bonds of racism. Andalus precludes the possibility of forming lots of white people started and attempt to unite all of society and have a mutual end between us. Also, conditional reps fixed are bad one, just reps fixed are bad one, seals the entire the one means causes to have to be restarted the one which means I can't leverage my office against accountable reading assembly as a critique, so you don't have to steal the entirety of the apps policy option solves back for all of your office. Also internal to education argument because I never get to play the case against accountable. Now in the second critique no link when he doesn't take stand for what means transfer says that those one from special theory should get which means permutation solves both. Also plan because the process depolarization group divided translation spirit the typically the person's knowledge transaction is discovered as it's part of the most physical and psychological able to translate the character for the way change variation we experiment the gender forms disability also permutation to the plan alternative all of the instances permutation to the category not textually or functionally compatible with the case which that should be the standard. It's necessary in order to determine competition of the first way. Otherwise, it's super subjective. Key fairness. But we short of the gender binary. Lee 80 medical model still today informed you have transmitted medical disorder. Those criticize medical model and self-determined models translate data to protect medical models. Piece of policy topical includes gender identity. Case link turns solve the impact particle on AD. Use the consent to human rights parameters social shooter of the public. Then establish control. They keep the possibility of sexual medical medicalization out of the public focus means the way the biological produce racism and the form of sexual regulation that medicalizes every idea of sexual tower. Society must be defensive responding because ignoring the militarized bodies can find its state of exception. Arc of exception.
Okay. So starting. How much time did I have left?
I wrote it down. I think I did. You had like 146.
Okay. Well, does anybody know?
Yeah, 144.
Okay. Starting. Did you read Reps Takes Bad?
Yeah.
Wait, what? Where did you stop reading?
What do you mean?
Did you read all of these?
Yeah, except for I marked the last card on the gender dysphoria at exception. And then I didn't read the stuff below the second card on the anesthesia.
So order's gonna be case on the framework stuff, and then it's gonna be
Framework as in like down or
no
Alright.
the policy implementation
Yeah.
framework argues. And then it's gonna be the turns. Then it's gonna be the second critique. Then procedure consciousness. Okay. Is everyone ready?
Yep.
Actually, I'm gonna start with the turns first. Then I'm gonna move to framework.
turns, framework.
Yeah.
Then what?
Then the same order.
Anesthesia and then second critique.
Yeah. Well, no, second critique.
Oh,
then
my bad.
anesthesia. Okay. Is everyone ready?
Yeah.
The response to the Finch analysis was pretty poor, not responsive at all. Your argument was that you do not force people to be transgender when you cross-apply the current analysis. That is not responsive because the Finch analysis indicates that if we leave transgender as a term that relies on self-identification, which is exactly what your cross-application would be, i.e. they get to self-identify if they want or if they do not want, that is what produces the impacts in the Finch analysis. Indicates that this form of framing and thinking allows others to reappropriate this concept, which only functions to be counterproductive because it allows people to misgender people. You conceded that you conceded the outweighs argument that the root cause of transgender oppresses people questioning their gender choice and what they are physically asking of transgender people encourages society to continue their oppressive attitudes of trans people by misgendering them. You your case outweighs arguments are not applicable because the only argument is that it's deontological, but my argument is that the framing is not a consequentialist argument, rather deontological, because it takes into account how you frame them and what that means in terms of what you justify your dreams. It still links into the AC pretty undercover turn that you lose around there. But even if you do not win that turn, I'll go to the framework. So. A lot of concessions on the overview. You conceded the third argument that anesthesia consciousness controls the internally into policy implementation because the Keating analysis indicates that the only way we can have a material effect in the first place is to engage in a self-reflective production of anesthesia consciousness means that which means that policy implementation is not necessarily good. But you also consider the counter-interpretation, which also of your discourse arguments. The counter-interpretation is that the negative does not have to run a post-field policy if it proposes a method that solves for material oppression in the affirmative, which is exactly what both critiques do. Because even if you do not categorize anesthesia consciousness as a post-field policy, it still engages in the effects of the material condition. Also, the reps pick engage in the same form of discussion. Then go to the critique first on reps picks bad. Counter-interpretation negative may win by reading a rep pick that should constitute sufficient to win the round. And I need that's what I did. While the net benefits one is ground picks are corner ground because they check back against unpredictable as I need to stable general advocacy to fall back on compete rather than substance because they have chooses an area then this is always most specific substance reasons. And second is discourse education prevents the net from questioning the representations used in the resolution debate about representation is uniquely educational as prerequisite to policy making skills as Russell non-policy making not simple responding to problems they are effectively framing problems that are thereby shaping the thoughts about the active perception role. The key individual in reframing these issues was crucial in determining what counted as evidence and how evidence is used in policy making. Cut the card at policy making 3. It is real world applicable. Policymakers prioritize debate over policy over word choice in bills. That's Cam 10 may or Charlotte or one small word may make a big difference. Lobbyists or financial firms and the structure are separating over the single word derives from the legislative consider the U.S. Senate both also struggling to change the text of the derived legislative before Congress to boost arguments. Also means that outweighs all his reasons as to why reps picks are bad because it links into his framing of the 1ACIE policy implementation. My argument is that policy implementation requires we look at our representations. Then go to his responses on the second critique. His first argument is that the plan, the group analysis indicates that the plan begins the process of depathologizing. But just because you begin the process does not mean that you effectively solve for it. Also, it's not a linked term because you still endorse that medical choice framing, which means that even if you depathologize it, you only pathologize it in another sense, which was a link analysis that you consider. Also, even if the app is a way or a shift from that, i.e. that's only the policy, which the alternative still encompasses so you get no unique benefit for this because I still do the policy, which means we pathologize, but the fact that there is a link which you the fact that there is a link i.e. a dissat to the dissat means that is a better reason to hedge on the alternative because it definitely does not link into this medical choice argument. Then you say permutation to the plan and the alternative and every other in all the instances. By my argument is that doing the plan policy is what is bad because the plan's policy is in effect it uses medical choice framing, which means that doing it in all other instances is not a good form of a permutation. Only links into the disadvantage again. Then you say that you destroy the binary, but again the alternative also encompasses this because it has your policy, which means that the link is only which means that it's only a question of a risk of a link. Then you say case link turns and solves your group all the case link turns. Those are not unique to your policy. The alternative also does that because it's a policy implementation. It means that you get a unique advantage. Then on anesthesia consciousness, you say I exclude trans people, but the Fengele analysis is pretty miscut. On the underlying text, it says that it says what a refiguration of the anesthesia would look like, which means that it says that Azandula's interpretation is bad, which I don't even use Azandula. Rather I just use anesthesia consciousness. His own author says that we should reconfigure anesthesia consciousness. Also, Fengali is a anesthesia consciousness advocate, so you are definitely miscutting this because I have evidence that I have well, it doesn't even matter, but this own card itself it literally says a reconfiguration of anesthesia consciousness, which also takes out your racism arguments because it proves that it's just something that is wrong with Azandula's interpretation, but that does not mean that it is not wrong with the project itself. Then then all these whiteness and racism arguments are not linked to your framework. Your framework is about sexual rights. I say I solve for sexual rights because it controls the internal link to breaking down distinction in the first place, which means it outweighs those impacts because there is no framing in the round. So here's how the round goes. Although you can vote off of the Finch 15 turn, there was literally one sentence put on it, which is that we get to self-identify and we don't tell people what they want to do. That is literally what the card is saying is bad. If you do not want to do that and want to go through the rest of the debate, then every single link turn argument is not a link turn because the policy also does that, which means it's a net benefit to the alternative. Any risk of a link is the reason you vote no.
Reps, case, K1, or K2, K1. The reps pick bad arg. You got it. Reps pick bad, case, second critique, first critique. Good?
Yes.
Your reps pick argument is in response to our interpretation that says that you can still read this as a criticism, but you can't read it as a pick out of our representation, which also co-opts all the reps arguments. These are also brand new with the 200, which means that these should have been read in the 180 because I started the reps debate in the 180, which means that these are technically new responses to the framework debate that says that discourse and reps focus is bad at the framework. And now let's go on to the line about you say that it's necessary grounded against absolutely. If you win the representations come first, that means you can just win this criticism. I don't get to weigh this against case, which is also only internally factor the unpredictability argument. Still means I access all the arguments about how it excuse my fairness because it forces me to restart the debate in 1 hour and moves the entirety of the 180, which puts me at 7463 times Q because I don't get to weigh the case against the counter because it steals the entirety of the case because the 180 does not have a defense under the representation, which means that now we also call solve your education arguments about how it's necessary in order that it's good to question representation, which again you should not allow because that debate should have happened in the 180 because you can still read this as a criticism of the medical model. There's no justification. The story of this reps debate is that there's no argument in the last speech that says that he should read this as a pick. Rather, all of these arguments are just that you get to read this as you say that rewording policy choices matter. Policy choices matter when you consider that fairness because fairness is necessary threshold for continuing education because if I was not able to fairly engage in the first place, limit education because it was unfair for me to engage in the first place, which means that I control the internal link to clash in education, which means that inevitably, which means that you would just drop the debate right there. He's considered that you just drop the debate on this issue because dropping the argument would be just dropping their advocacy, which means that inevitably this is where it's game over. The story is he doesn't have any offense about why picks are key now on the case. You've considered the multiple different arguments. One of the Carroll evidences says that self-identification is inevitable because trans people are inevitably going to call themselves trans people, which means that there's no uniqueness for any no uniqueness for any impact of the case outweighs. Also, two, it doesn't. One, there's not unique to the trans people are self-identifying status quo. So even if he wins his turn, the case outweighs because caused by the solvency evidence that says that the plan is necessary in order to recognize the humanity of trans individuals, which means that clearly outweighs one instance which have one turn which has no uniqueness for any impacts. Now, the framework debate, you've considered the argument that you should only look towards anthropological argument. This is purely consequential because it's saying the what would the consequence of the plan be, which would clearly to that. Now, our debate is that you should only affect the side, look at the side, we go to the plan. Schwartz evidence has gone conceded again, and the fairness argument. Schwartz says that discourse is not bad because it creates states phobia and makes us not want to engage state, which means that it disproves your mestizo consciousness argument about you resulting behavioral conditions because it creates fear of bureaucratic institutions. Second one, it's the fairness argument, which when conceded in the last speech says that if you were able to have multiple different interpretations of the FIE discourse argument, that I'm never able to engage that because there are infinite interpretations means I lose the entirety of the one. That was also known as the reps argument. Now the second critique, you can see that permutation would do the counterweight because the only way we can determine competition is via functional and textual competition. You don't have functional competition, meaning counterweight competition extremely subjective, which means permutation to the counterweight resolve all the internal internally. Chief also consider the double blind that says adolescents are actually no going to the other key first piece of evidence has gone conceded. Your only argument that's miscut out of concept, but it's very specific to say that mestizo consciousness excludes trans people from their binary. Just because you know a lot about mestizo consciousness doesn't mean you can drop this argument, which means that the alternative is not solve the case. He also does not extend alt solvency in the last speech, which means that case outweighs. He has no solvency. Clear out ballot. Good debate. Thanks, so.
will you go, because I know the door's locked, Connor, will you go let Varad in, please, and tell him we're ready? Thanks. For a few more RFDs, I'm not even gonna be able to talk.
Yeah, Steve's ready up. What? Steve is ready. Wonderful.
Wonderful. Okay, good debate. Very interesting stuff. I end up voting F. I think that, I find it a little odd that this theory argument ends up developing like this, and then ends up being exploded in the 2AR. I don't necessarily know if I thought like, I had a little bit of a hard time following the 1AR. A lot of the analytic stuff in the 1AR was tricky for me to follow. So it might have been that I just missed some of these voting issue arguments. It framed more for me in a way that this frames what arguments that you can evaluate in the round, rather than, it seemed like in the 2AR you were going for this as fairness as a voter, you should drop the argument, or drop the debater on that. And those arguments I wasn't really clear on in the 1AR, but at the worst, then that means that his interaction that he's doing with that fairness argument means that criticism has to go away, right? And the interaction he does in 2AR is very good, because he says that you